Question. I call the member for Holt.
Thank you very much, Mr Acting Deputy or Deputy Speaker. It's interesting in discussing the appropriation bill for this government's budget this year that was delivered by our Treasurer that in much discussion about this budget there seems to have been a collective amnesia about what transpired in our country over the past 3 years, which has led in many parts to the way in which this budget has been framed. And on reflecting on my contribution with respect to this matter today, I cast my mind back to what was actually occurring in 2008, because it does have a very profound bearing on what has actually occurred in this responsible budget that was delivered by our Treasurer. And as I recall in 2008, and it's probably worth reminding those here and more broadly about what was occurring, we had basically the collapse of initially the United States banking system, which then spread like a contagion throughout other countries, including in particular Europe. At that period of time, as I recall, there was great uncertainty within the Australian community and also concern, I might add, amongst governments around the world about whether or not the world financial system would in fact hold up, would it collapse. You are actually having banks in America that would not be lending to each other, that effectively capital dried up in America and then almost throughout the world. As I understand it, particularly during that period of time, almost 3 occasions during that turbulent period of time in 2008, policymakers from countries around the globe, legislators, governments, were effectively looking at the collapse of the global financial system. Even here, we have escaped the ravages of that global recession, as has been discussed elsewhere. Let's look at what was occurring within Australia at the period of time before the introduction of the much criticised by some stimulus packages. We had a situation, for example, on a weekend in October where our government met through its SPBC committee, where we had absolute evidence that were we not going to introduce a bank guarantee, that there were going to be a run on our banks. And that evidence was not just anecdotal, it was evidentiary and it was conclusive, which led to the Australian government underpinning our banks with the bank guarantee, and it did. I was actively speaking to people in my electorate that had we not issued that guarantee on that weekend in October, we're going to take enormous amounts of money out of their banks. And these were solid banks with, I think, AAA credit rating at that period of time. These were our 4 banks. I had a businessman that was basically talking about, because they saw what was occurring globally and effectively were reflecting that onto the existing banking system, our banking system, notwithstanding the fact that it was underpinned by fundamentals. But at that stage, when you're dealing with consumer confidence, you have to take measures that restore consumer confidence, and that bank guarantee was actually put in place and actually stopped a run on the banks. The second issue that we dealt with at that period of time, in talking to a number of major employers around the area, were that they were tremendously concerned about that consumer confidence and then what was actually going to occur. And that was that they were, major employers in my electorate were going to lay off workers. In fact, they were going to lay off thousands of workers. And I would meet very regularly with groups of employers around the Dandenong region, major manufacturers, major retailers, etc., and they would be effectively saying that the government needed to take action. They needed to spend money. They needed to stimulate the economy. And we did, as a consequence of that, through 2 stimulus packages, and as a consequence of that, saved many thousands of jobs in the southeastern area. Now, I think it's just instructive to recall the background which led to these stimulus measures being taken, which are obviously very heavily criticised, but in reality saved a lot of jobs in our region and delivered much-needed social infrastructure in our region as well. It's important to note that, for example, that in that period of time, notwithstanding the global financial crisis and its potential impact on Australia, as a consequence of the actions that the government took, that we created over 300,000 jobs in this past year alone. But there's one thing that we should take note of, and the budget looks at, that there are still 320,000 young people who are not in education, they're not in employment, and they're not in training. And in my electorate of Holt, which is one of the fastest growing areas in the country, there's an ever-increasing need to invest in education infrastructure to support the need of families in our area. According to the statistics provided by our local council, the City of Casey, there are approximately 23,000 Casey residents attempting primary school and 17,000 attending secondary school. That adds up to about 18.4% of the Casey population. There are approximately 5,000 Casey residents that are attending university, an equivalent number are attending TAFE. Now, as these statistics indicate, with a large population of young people in my electorate, it's been imperative for our government to invest in educational infrastructure in the local area, as well as supporting families coping with increasing educational costs. And as I said, we've delivered, I think, since 2007, 101 in my electorate educational projects at a cost of more than $129 million. We've seen the construction of new multi-purpose halls, performing arts centres, trade training centres and improved sporting facilities at many, many schools in my electorate. And before basically looking at how these projects have made a real difference, and they have to the local community, a very significant difference, we just look at some of the other measures that we've taken in terms of delivering further opportunities to our people in our area and actually ameliorating some of the cost of living pressures that we know that they are experiencing. For example, with the $1,700 trades apprentice income bonus, will be provided for up to 3,005 people in Holt to encourage them to complete critical trade qualifications. There are up to 8,700 families in Holt that could be eligible for the extra $4,200 per child for kids aged between 16 and 19 under the changes to the family tax benefit. The educational tax refund, which is very important in terms of families in my area, we're increasing the government's investment by $460 million. The payment advances of $1,000 will be provided to meet unexpected family expenses, and that happens a lot, particularly in areas like mine, to receive childcare support fortnightly. There are other sort of significant investments, one in particular which I was particularly proud of and I think would be supported on those on the other side, which was the $222 million to support the National School Chaplaincy Program. I presume that that's being supported. I think that's a much-needed program that delivers essential support. What's that? I don't think we were dragged screaming. I've been a very strong advocate for some period of time. As many people and many schools that work in my area will be talking to me, I don't think dragging screaming. I think we were the ones that initiated and actually guaranteed it in the Ford estimates. But anyway, we were about to, but didn't actually continue it in the Ford estimates. In terms of some of the local infrastructure, where this has been affected by the stimulus spending, I was certainly proud earlier this year to attend the BER opening of a new multi-purpose facility at the Southern Cross Primary School, which has established that school in 1983. And at the opening, I had the pleasure of recognising Principal Avril Nunn for her hard work in ensuring the project's success, having worked closely with parents and tradespeople to deliver this important project in Endeavour Hills. And I was delighted to open this multi-purpose facility and witness firsthand the impact that its construction had on the community, and to hear of the many practical functions that the facility will be used for by this school and the broader community. And one of the community programs as a whole will be used for is like a community culture group. So not only is it providing facilities for the students, but also for the broader community, which was the intention of these projects. Now, this is a group, the community culture group, that aims to facilitate the integration of non-English speaking families with dinners, get-togethers and information sessions for up to 50 people. The group was established 4 years ago and it's grown so much that they now require a bigger space to meet. Now, prior to this group being formed, the participants had limited contact in the community. The participants, most of them parents now, have real bonds within their community. Now, the program has also been successful in bridging potential misunderstanding between cultures. It's a real chance for the participants to engage in the community. Other programs that will be run at the facility include the Mindfulness Meditation program, financial counselling and classes, parenting help sessions. The Principal Avril Nunn has stated that this project, which is a BR project, has opened the door for the community to strengthen ties and provide role models to our community, showing that we understand and trust each other. It's great to see how a new multi-purpose facility at this school can have such a positive impact on our local community. And the other issue, another facility that I wish to talk about, and one which we certainly initiated, which was the trade training centres, and particularly the Hallam Valley Trade Training Centre and Skills Hub, which will benefit 7 local schools. Now, the federal Labor government has committed $10 million to this project, which is part of Labor's economic plan to provide world-class, job-ready training for our young secondary students across the region in traditional and emerging trades. Now, the Hallam Valley Trade Training and Skills Hub is a cross-sectional trade training centre that aims to provide high-level training in traditional and emerging trades for senior school students at Hallam Senior Secondary School, Fountain Gate Secondary College, Gleneagles Secondary College, Endeavour Hills Secondary College, Hampton Park Secondary College, Narre Warren South Peter 12 and St John's Regional Centre. Now, the participants in the program will have the opportunity to experience a wide variety of vocational skills training, whilst at the same time continue their studies for entry to university or higher education at their local secondary college. We know that our long-term prosperity is dependent on investing in world-class training and education system, and that's why we've made the investments in projects like these. Because in doing that, and the feedback has been extremely positive with respect to this particular trade training facility and the demand for a facility of its type in this area. We want to give them opportunity. It's one of the great things that I think that our previous Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, said in the famous 2007 election campaign, where he spoke about a trade qualification being the equivalent of a university degree. And I think this government has been putting its money where its mouth is with respect to that by providing opportunity for our young people to go to these sorts of facilities. And as I said, a lot of the genesis of the trade training centres came about from seeing the work that people in some of these schools had been doing and responding to their needs to provide those comprehensive facilities. There's one thing, I'm running short of time here, that I wish to discuss, and that was also another BER-funded project, which was the River Gum Performing Arts Centre. Now, during Education Week last week, I had the pleasure of officially opening the River Gum Performing Arts Centre, which is located at the Hampton Park Secondary School. And this was obviously funded through the BER and also the National Schools Pride program. Now, the Performing Arts Centre is being constructed on the Hampton Park Secondary College site and is a shared facility between River Gum Primary School and Hampton Park Secondary College. It's the first facility of its type in Hampton Park, allowing community use for events such as drama school, musicals and other performances. The project obviously overcame some significant hurdles, particularly at the starting point, because it wasn't built on the site of the River Gum Primary School. It was actually built at the Hampton Park Secondary School. But after extensive negotiations, the project was accepted. It was within the guidelines, much to the delight of the school members and the Hampton Park community and residents. Now, the principal of River Gum Primary School, Roma McKinnon, basically was thrilled with the opening because it's the culmination of years of hard work, and not only is it used by the students of River Gum and Hampton Park Secondary College, but by the community as well. We had Christmas Day performances, graduation ceremonies and a movie with Mum for Mother's Day this year. This Performing Arts Centre, which had been discussed by many for some number of years, came to fruition as a consequence of this federal government funding through the BER project. I was absolutely delighted to launch that particular facility. These are just a few examples of the investment that the federal government has made in much-needed social infrastructure in this region, driven by the financial exigencies of the time, driven by the fact that we needed to be putting money into the system. But the fact is that these projects are magnificent projects. they're delivering the community what they want and what they need.